Here with Garrett Jones, play-by-play announcer for Houston Baptist University. Garrett, two things. Number one, just talk about how you got into broadcasting, and two, your role at HBU.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks so much for having me. This is really cool what you guys are doing. I feel really flattered to be a part of it. I started in broadcasting because I went to the University of Missouri, knew that I wanted to do something in sports. I always just loved it growing up, always was the kid leading the conversation in high school. So I knew I wanted to do something in sports. Originally went to be a beat writer at the student paper at Mizzou, and it was great. I didn't love it though. I was kind of looking for something that I loved. Ended up finding my way to student radio, and that was just instantly it. I knew it when I stepped in. I love broadcasting, love live play-by-play, obviously. Just the preparation, the stats, the bio, telling a story, being there for a game for free, press box food, obviously. I mean, you can't go wrong there. I just fell in love with it instantly. So yeah, it was a very quick path once I realized that I wanted to take a different direction from sports writing where I wanted to go. And very quickly, I graduated in 2020, found my way to Houston, did some high school sports, worked at a sports talk radio station. Eventually, the job at HBU came open thanks to my good friend Lonnie King retiring. And I was lucky enough to end up getting that job, starting with football and basketball last year. And it's just been a great experience. I'm really enjoying it.
That's great. And sometimes you have to do something like writing to find out that you'd rather do announcing. So,
Exactly.
it kind of guides you in that direction. So you mentioned that you're at Houston Baptist now. They're a very young program, started officially in 2014 at FCS play in the Southland Conference. Just talk about their brief history over the last few years.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see a program come from quite literally the bottom up. HBU is not a school where, they had football in the 50s or 60s, but the school's only been around since the 1960s. It's not like a St. John's, for example, where they're a great basketball school, but they used to have a football. HBU literally created a football program out of thin air in 2013, which is just amazing. It's super cool history. They've already seen success. I don't think that it's been as many wins and losses as far as the wins and loss column as much as they would like. But the fact that Bailey Zappi, who went to Western Kentucky last year, he was only offered by HBU coming out of high school, and they have found a formula to win. And like we said, it hasn't necessarily translated to win the losses, but in 2019, they started 5-1. In 2020, Bailey Zappi almost led them to a win over Texas Tech, which was the only matchup in school history against a Power 5 foe. And then last year, they showed plenty of signs of promise. Unfortunately, got derailed by injury. But in the coming years, they found a formula to win. They like these under the radar guys from kind of the valley up near Corpus Christi and in the Houston area, obviously, which is a football hotbed. And they found a way to get talent in the door. Now I think it's just a question of everything going right. And unfortunately, last year, that did not happen due to injuries. But other than that, they showed a ton of promise. And I'm really looking forward to see what they do.
Yeah, and you mentioned they had their highest win total in 2019, opted out of 2020, obviously 2021, kind of getting things back in order. And that leads me into my next question about Coach Shealy. This is a full off season, recruits come in, all the spring practices. What have been your observations during the spring?
Yeah, well, first off, Coach Shealy is one of the best people I've ever met in sports. I mean, he is just a fantastic human being. And I'm not just saying that to flatter him in case somebody at HBU stumbles upon this. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. He doesn't have to do anything for me. This offseason, while he was recruiting, he offered to take me to lunch. I just thought that was so cool. He's just an awesome person. So he is the right man for the job. I mean, there's no question about that. And I'm so happy that he's leading HBU. And, he did mention that they're a lot healthier this offseason. They got through the offseason pretty well. They've got some guys in that they like. They feel pretty good about going into 2022. I think, unfortunately, one of the things that they've run into, which is not unlike all the other FCS schools in the country, their transfer portal has been a bit of an issue. They had some guys that were really strong, unfortunately, already go and leave and play at the FBS level. So that just goes to show you, right? They're finding FBS caliber talent. I think the question is, how do you keep them here and how do you help them produce to the maximum level on the field? So that's going to be their question that they're trying to answer moving forward. But he's got a great coaching staff. Shane Eachus is a really up and coming defensive coordinator. Wouldn't be surprised if you see him move on to greater things in the future. Roger Hinshaw is a fantastic man, and just as college football stalwart, has been around for 40 years. Cedric Cormier showed that they can do good things offensively in 2019 and 2020. And probably my favorite story, and I realize we don't want to take too much time on this. Blaise Benson was the starting quarterback going into last season. Unfortunately, in game number 3 of the year, he suffered a head injury and had to medically retire from football. And it was one of those things where we're just glad that Blaise is okay. But a pretty cool story. He's actually now the tight ends coach on Vic Shealy's staff. So just a really cool God thing, a really cool opportunity for him. And I'm really excited to see how he becomes a part of the staff. But the coaching at HBU is elite. And all that to say, I think that they feel pretty good about what they've got in this offseason in 2022.
That's great. And take care of a family, right? Present one door closes, open up another one. So you guys play in Husky Stadium. We talked about how new program, the stadium was built specifically at the same time as the football program was started up. It seats about 5,000 fans. Talk about what people would expect coming to Husky Stadium on game day.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun because it's a very intimate experience, right? There's not a whole lot of places, even in the FCS, where you can get right on top of the action, but you can't at Husky Stadium because right now we have one side to our stadium. One thing I know they're really excited about is they added in a Jumbotron with a live video screen. That's something that they've been wanting for a while, and fans who come out in 2022 will get to see that. I know they're super pumped to just engage fans a little more with that. And then in the future, they do want to develop the other side of the stadium and eventually add into that. But right now, that creates a cool opportunity for fans and students. I mean, the student section is right on top of the bench. It's a really, really cool experience. And yeah, when things are clicking, you know, it's the place to be on campus. There's definitely some tailgating, and it's a great place to spend a fall afternoon, especially in Texas, where, you know, you don't want to spend a summer afternoon outside, but you do want to spend a fall afternoon outside. So it's a great place to be. And I'm really looking forward to having you out there one day so that we can check your next stadium off your list.
I definitely want to. And, you know, I looked at the stadium. I'm surprised I haven't been there because I've been in games at Rice and Houston and all over the place. But no track, which is my #1 check far as a legit stadium. So, yeah, I know you guys are expandable too. So I definitely want to get out there and catch a game as soon as possible. So last question here. So we talked about some of the program history. We talked about what's been happening in the off season. I want to talk about maybe some expectations for the fall. You guys have out of conference Northern Colorado, Texas State, Lindenwood, and UT Martin. Maybe not win-loss or maybe win. What are reasonable expectations for HBU football in 2020 or 2022?
Yeah, I think it's just improving offensively. I think they expect to be a lot more competitive than they were last year, just because I mentioned Coach Shealy told me that he had never seen the amount of injuries in all of his decades of coaching football. He had never seen the amount of injuries that he saw last year. So they fully expect to be much, much better than they were last year. And I think just being competitive in the conference would be a huge step forward. But you mentioned the out of conference schedule. I think it lines up pretty well for HBU. You've got a challenging road game to open the year in Northern Colorado, but Texas State, no offense to them, they're a little vulnerable. They lost to Incarnate Word last year, who won the Southland Conference last year. So that kind of bodes well for HBU with that connection. And I think that is a school, I'm not going to outright say that HBU will beat them. I think that's a school that HBU can sneak up on, if that makes sense. And that's their lone FBS game of the season. Last year, we went to New Mexico, who was a solid team out in the Mountain West. They had Terry Wilson at quarterback, and HBU played that into a 1-touchdown game late in the fourth quarter. So I definitely think there's the overlooking aspect of a school that schedules HBU early in the season. They're kind of expecting to play deep down their depth chart. And I think HBU does a really good job of sneaking up on schools like that. Almost beat UTEP in 2019, almost beat Texas Tech. I mean, within a field goal of beating Texas Tech in 2020, who ended up being a solid team. So, yeah, I've kind of got that Texas State game circled as a game that they could possibly sneak and win. But I definitely think at the very least, they expect some tangible improvement in 2022.
Awesome. Well, we're going to keep an eye on it. Everybody check out Garrett on Twitter at @GJonesOnAir. Garrett, thank you so much for your time.
Awesome to be here. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody check out CFB Profiles, more good guests like Garrett.